Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome back to the SEO course. So in this video, I'll be walking you through how to audit your Google Search Console. So before these videos, you would have already known the importance of having Google Search Console. So if you didn't get it set up yet, I think this video will also be able to help you out because while you're setting up your Google Search Console, you will know what specific things to look out for so that you're setting things up correctly. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to see here is this template, which it's one of the templates that we use in my agency. So I'm going to have this template for you guys. So all you have to do is just look down in the resources section. You should be able to copy this template. And just like with any of the templates, please make sure you are looking at this, and if you can, like I mentioned in my previous video, if you can pick up one good habit, that habit would be to learn a little bit about how to use Google Sheets, because algorithms and softwares and platforms, they change from time to time. So this template might be useful right now, as of right now, but it will not be relevant if some major changes happen within Google Search Console, for example. So you always want to make sure that you are checking this before you take any sort of template to implement it straight away, to make sure that it's relevant. So with that being said, I think we can jump into this video tutorial where I show you over the shoulder of what you should be looking out for, how to set up your Google Search Console, so that it's so that before you start implementing SEO for your website or whichever website that you're working on, you have everything set in place. So the first thing that you're going to want to do, right, is you're going to want to make a template of this, and you can obviously rename it to, you know, whatever things that you want. If you're doing it for a client, if you're doing it for other websites, you can list it under the website name. But yeah, just go crazy with it. So once you've done this, all you have to do is just click check off. And then the next one is, you can see over here what's the checklist. This is a Google Search Console account. So if the Google Search Console account is set up, if no, then you will need to go in and set it up, right? So if it's no, you're gonna have to go in and set it up, which is here. If it's yes, just click yes, and then you can move on to the next section. Okay, so what is your so you can see over here, this is client target country, and a lot of these templates, like I mentioned, you can go and make any changes or edit it as you like. For us, I indicate it as client because, like I mentioned, we do all this for our clients. So what is the target country or target demographic? So is client targeting more than one country? Okay, if the answer is yes, you just list down here yes. If it's no, just list down here no. Okay, if no, list down the country client is targeting in details, right? So for example, if is the client targeting more than one country? If it's yes, then that means to say if you are going to be marketing to more than Singapore, for example, Singapore and US, then that's going to be a yes. Okay, but however, if you are only looking to sell or market your products, your brand, specifically targeting Singaporeans, then it's going to be a no. Okay, so if it's no, then you want to key in your target country here. Okay, so for example, I'm going to list down as Singapore because this is a course for Singaporeans. But the reality of this is you can change this to any kind of country that you're targeting, okay? Whether if it's US. Now, if it's yes, then you can just leave this as blank, okay? So, yeah, I'm going to redo this, okay? And then next one you want to look at is what's the website version. So if you learned the previous video about the Google Analytics setup, you want to know what is your version of your site, whether if it's a version or whether if it's not a version, okay? And you can look at this through just Googling your brand name or the website that you're working on, and you can look at a first result that shows whatever result. So I'm going to do this again. So you go to Google and then you just basically type in, for example, Trav, and you can see the URL here. This is HTTPS and there is no right? So this is the first result. So this is the correct version. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to just indicate this as the correct version, which is like that. Okay, you can just include this like that. Okay, so you know the correct version of your website. Okay, I'm going to remove all this. Now I am going to switch, actually I'm going to make a copy of this because that is the template that you guys will be working with, and I don't want it to be messy for you guys. Okay, so let me just do everything here. Okay, so so in this case, I can just put it down. My website version is the one with the ... Okay, and you can just click yes. Okay, so now moving on to the next part, this is where you will kind of go through the audit, and then you can see some of the status here. Okay, and then I'm going to remove this section here, this training section here, because I think within there, this is basically how we train people who onboard, you know, who work with us. And I think there's some confidential information here, so I'm going to delete this column. And yeah, so I'm going to continue working on this. And so yeah, so this part is also for us to, you know, for our project management. So I'm going to delete this. So we're going to start off with looking at the items first. So these are the items that we are going to audit, and then this is the specific things that is required. And then under the audit results, you can see there is a yes or there is a no. So anytime you indicate the results here, it will show you whether something is pass or fail. So pass will be in green, fail will be in red. And usually with fails, there will be some kind of recommendations that you will need to do, and then for implementation is basically who is the one who is the one that's going to be implementing it, and then reviewing the implementation that's been done, and then also if there's any other notes. Okay, so let me walk you through and also explain to you why we are looking out for this specific stuff, because I think all these are pretty important. So the reason why we do Google Search Console audit, right? First of all, is to make sure that this Google property, this specific Google property, which is GSC, we want to make sure that it's tracking consistent data or consistent variable within all your Google properties. So your Google Analytics and your Google Search Console, these two things, the things that we want to track must be consistent. So that's why the first thing that we're going to look at is the website version. So all you have to do, right, for website version is go over to your settings. Okay, so this is how your Google Search Console will look like, and then go over to settings, and what you want to do is wait a minute. Yeah, so yeah, my apologies. So what you have to do is once you get your Google Search Console set up, you want to check to see if this URL is the correct version as what you have indicated over here. So you can see https://tref.com, https://tref.com, right? So you want to make sure that this is the correct version. Okay, if you see, for example, if in my case, if I see a .tref.com, that means www.tref.com, this means to say this is incorrect version, and you want to make sure that this is the correct version. So in my case, I'm going to list down as yes, this is tracking the correct version. If it's not tracking the correct version, then obviously, if you're doing this for your own website, you don't have to put down like recommendations, you know, what to do, right? Because you can straight away go in and make the changes. However, if you're doing this for another website, or if you're doing this in a team level, you have to pass this to another person to make the recommendations, or pass it to your developers to make the implementation, then this is where you will go in and basically let the developers know, hey, change the GSC property to track the correct version without the ... right? Okay, and then yeah, you can basically, this is the recommendations, and then implementation, you can decide who will be the one implementing it, okay, or if there's any notes that you want to include within the implementation. And then for us as an agency, we have a review, and the reason why is because sometimes when we pass over this implementation for our clients' developers to manage, we have to go in and review if the implementation is done correctly, because we don't want to, you know, essentially solve a problem but end up with another problem, right? So this is why we have a review section here, and then these are the notes just basically for any note keeping purposes. So if you're doing this for your own website, you don't actually need to have a recommendation, because all you have to do, right, it's you just go in and simply change it and update it. Okay, so if you see this is the wrong version, you just have to go in and update to the correct version. Now, if you are tracking the domain level, so if you go and set up Google Search Console, right, it will allow you to track either on the URL level, okay, so on the URL level or on the domain level. Now, if your property type is on a domain level, you don't have to worry about this, because this is this GSC will be tracking any form of version of your website. So whether it's www or whether if it's the non-www version, it will track essentially all of them. Whereas if you're setting up a URL prefix, you want to make sure that in this case mine is set up correctly, but if yours is not set up correctly, you want to go in here and enter the correct version of your website, and then just use this property instead, because it will be a lot more consistent. Okay, at least that's how I do it. Okay, so the next one, so in this case I'm going to put yes, because there's no errors here. And then the next one you can see is are there any coverage errors. So under coverage, you can go in here and you want to click on coverage. Now what you want to do, right, is you want to look at to see if there's any errors. So you can see there are some errors here. Okay, so what we do is we can put under yes, and then now this is where you go in and look at specific stuff within what's going on. So look at the errors, and then below here they will show you what kind of error you're facing. So in this case, for example, there are some URLs, okay, and you can click into it to find out what's the problem. Okay, so you can see submitted URL blocked by robots.txt, but you can see over here, these are the files that is being blocked by robots.txt. However, I think our agency has already fixed this. It's just taking a little bit of time to update it. So again, what you have to do is just go in and check out to see if there's any coverage issues. So for example, in this case, I know this is not a main problem because we don't have this website here. We don't have this web page here. Okay, but what you want to do, right, is you want to basically go in and check to see if there's any coverage errors. Now, if you see there's a lot of coverage errors for specific item, then that's where you want to go in and list down, one, like for example, I can list down in this case, 8 pages submitted by URL blocked by robots.txt, for example, 8 pages blocked by robots.txt, but in sitemap. Okay, and the reason why it's submitted is because most likely they are on the page's sitemap. Okay, so we either want to, like for this specific instance, you either want to go into your robots.txt. The first thing you want to do is to make sure that are these pages, do you want these pages to be indexed? Okay, and what I mean by index is you want Google to crawl these pages and put them on the Google results page. So if you want them to be indexed, then obviously you can, you want to remove these pages from the robots.txt or from the, remove them from the robots.txt. If these pages you do not want them to index, then this could be a specific direction that that you are doing. So in this case, if I don't want Google to pick up these links, I will just block it by robots.txt and then remove them from my sitemap. Okay, so that is a little bit to do with technicality, but because we are still within the foundation stage, I'm not going to go through like in-depth detail of what you should see here, but this is basically just to give you an understanding of whether do you have any coverage issues with your website. Okay, so in this case I'm going to say yes, but however for me I don't have to do it because this recommendation, I already know like what to do and we have already implemented it. So it's just Google is taking time for it to crawl. So we can put it as yes, and then no changes required. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing this is because, like I mentioned, if you're doing this for your own website, then there's nobody for you to pass this document to. You basically are just trying to communicate with yourself, right? So like for me in this instance, I'm just doing this because I'm trying to explain to you guys what I would do if I'm doing this for another website. So moving on, you can see the next one will be sitemap. So are there any sitemaps submitted? Okay, now let me explain to you why this is important. So sitemaps are essentially the first place Google looks at when they're trying to understand your website. And how they understand your website is they will send spiders, and kind of like spiders, right? What they call Google bots, and they will basically send these spiders to go into your website, and these spiders will crawl your, basically kind of like how AI scan every individual code on your site. That's what we mean by crawl. So they will go in, they will crawl your website, and they will understand the words of it, the page titles and everything. So they will crawl all the code within your website. And the first place that they will go to start crawling will be your sitemaps. And that's why sitemaps is very important. If you don't have sitemap within your Google Search Console, right, it's kind of like having a sitemap submitted in Google Search Console is kind of giving Google, you're kind of helping Google do its job better. Because if you have a sitemap within your Google Search Console, which is a Google property, what you're doing is you're telling Google, hey Google, these are my pages sitemap. You can follow these links and then start from this pages here, and then do your job. Okay. If you don't have a sitemap, what Google will do is they will not have that kind of like assistant, and they will just basically still do his job. But as compared to having a sitemap, if you have a sitemap, it's going to be a lot easier for them to do its job. So how you can go under sitemap is basically, you can see over here index, you can just click on sitemaps, and you can see there is a sitemap being submitted. Now, if you do not see a sitemap that's here, all you have to do is just go and find out what is your sitemap URL. Usually this will be the sitemap URL. So sitemap.xml, for example. Okay, so your domain /sitemap.xml, you can go in and click and see whether if that's your sitemap. Usually that's the case. However, if that's not the case, then you just need to find out what is your sitemap's URL. If you don't have a sitemap, then you obviously want to go and set up your sitemap. And it's pretty easy for you to set up your sitemap in a WordPress website, because usually if you use a SEO plugin, they will usually have it done for you already. So you just want to make sure that this sitemap is set up. So in this case, for example, my sitemap is yes, so nothing wrong there. Now you want to look for any errors in your sitemap. So in this case, you can see there is no errors, right? The status is success. There is no errors here. Okay, so I'm going to leave down as no. Now, if there are errors here, you're going to list down as yes, and then you basically have to go and find out why is it causing an error, and you want to fix that. All right. So next up will be Core Web Vitals. Now, Core Web Vitals are basically how would I put this? Core Web Vitals, let me show you. So if you go to Core Web Vitals here, you can see mine doesn't have enough data here for me to show you, but basically it will show you some important metrics like your page speed, your other stuff related to important metrics for how Google see your website. Basically, Core Web Vitals is kind of like a lifeline or a different metrics for them to understand and determine whether if your page is quality or not. And this is with regards to Core Web Vitals. Okay, so you want to check if there is any poor URLs in mobile Core Web Vitals. Okay, so mobile is here, and then desktop is the one below. So you always want to make sure to check both first. Check both to see if there's any. Now, with regards to implementation or fixing these, this will obviously, if you can, you want to fix both issues. However, you always want to take a look from a mobile first approach, because nowadays people are browsing websites or using the internet via mobile first. So that's why mobile first is more important. So if you have a lot of things going on, if there's a choice for you to decide which one you want to do first, you want to pick mobile first. However, this is not always the case. You want to look at what your demographics are, because if you, let's say for example, if you are a B2B site and you're offering B2B services, chances are people who are going to be looking for your services are people who are using the desktop during working hours, and that's why you should focus on desktop first and then mobile later on, right? Because that's not always the case. Like for example, for my case, because I run an agency, most of my the people that are looking for SEO services, for example, they are office workers. They are usually working between 8 to 5, and when they are 8 to 5, they are usually on their desktop. So I would then focus on desktop first and then mobile later on. Now, this doesn't mean that you forego. This just means prioritization, which is one important thing that you have to learn. With regards to search engine optimization, it's about prioritizing which task or which implementations you want to do first. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to put no because I don't have any data. But if you have any, if it's yes, if there is any poor data here, that poor URLs that show data, usually it's because of how the website is developed. So if you are the one developing your website, then there will be some instructions for you to either reduce your LCP, the specific terms, but they will tell you why it's poor in URL. And usually you have to get a developer, your developer, or if you're the one developing the website, you will need to go in and make some changes with regards to how you are developing or how the website is coded. Okay. So slightly more advanced, which I'm not going to cover in detail. Again, this is just to let you know what issues you have, because with search engine optimization, sometimes it's about finding out what problems you have before you go in and fix those issues. Okay, so I'm going to put no here. Now, mobile usability. So mobile usability, you can see over here. This just means that if your website is mobile compatible, because sometimes something will load very well on the desktop version, but if you change it to a mobile version, the formatting all goes out of place. So this place is where it will tell you whether it's your website or whatever website that you're working on, is it mobile responsive? Because if it isn't, it will show up here as well. Okay, so in this case, you can see the green ones are basically all good to go. You just want to pay attention to if there's any errors. Okay, so if there is errors, just list down yes, and then all the URLs will be here. If there is no errors, you can just click no. Okay, and then move on to the next one. Now, this part is also very important. Are there any manual penalty? So how you check for manual penalty, it's you go down to your security and manual actions here, and you want to click on manual actions. Okay, so manual action, the reason why we check for this is because if a website has a manual penalty, this means to say Google has identified some issues with your site and determine it as a bad quality or blacklisted, and they will essentially take your whole website out from their Google search index, which means to say your website won't appear on Google. So whenever you search for your brand or your website doesn't show up, or that means there is 100% removal, or they could limit or reduce the pages that you have on your website. So for example, if you have 100 pages, maybe only 1 or 2 pages is on Google search index. Okay, and usually they will tell you why there is a manual penalty. And this is very important, because if you were to start your SEO without looking at this, and if your website has a manual penalty and you don't know about this, you can spend months and months doing optimization and then wondering why it doesn't work, simply because your website has a penalty in the first place and you need to fix this first. Okay, so manual penalty usually happens because of some tactics, some shady tactics like building spammy backlinks, keyword stuffing and stuff like that. But usually the cause of it is backlinks. So don't worry, because within this Google Search Console tab, if you click on manual action, and if there is a manual action, they will usually tell you why it's being flagged as a manual action. And this is the first thing that you need to fix first. Okay, so in this case, there is no. Okay, and next up will be security issues. The same thing. You want to see if there's any security issues with your site, to see if your site has any vulnerability to hacks or spam, this kind of stuff. If there isn't, just click no. If there is, just click yes. Okay, so yeah, the next one is, you can see international targeting. So is the client targeting more than one country? So if the answer is yes, then this stage will set up. This one will be white in color, but you can see, because for my website, I'm only targeting one specific demographic, so that's why I don't have to worry about this setting up. Okay, so now if your website is targeting multiple country, then what you want to do is you want to check to see if your Google Search Console is set up to target multiple country. and this is a resource for you. You can go in and take a look. So if you open this up, this will give you a rough idea of what you're looking for in terms of how to set up to make sure that your Google Search Console is tracking the correct version, for example. So let me give you an example. So if your website currently it's like, for example, trev.com, and I'm targeting different countries, you want to make sure under your, first of all, if you're setting up on a domain level, this will not be a problem because your domain will be able to recognize this. But if you're setting up on a URL level, then you can go into settings here. Where is it? Legacy tools and reporting, and you want to go to international targeting. Okay, and you can see over here, if you go over to country, okay, this will say target users in Singapore. Now, this will change depending on which country that you are trying to target here. Okay, and then if you want to target multiple country, or if you are targeting multiple country, you want to select the country that is targeting your biggest demographic. So for example, if I am advertising in USA and Singapore, right, then I want to make sure the majority of my demographic is targeted at US because that is the market. It's a lot more there, so I want it to be more prominent there. So that's why I choose US. However, if you are only targeting one country, then you will just want to select that one country. So in this case, mine is Singapore. So you need to make sure that this is selected the country that you want to target. Okay, and I've left a resource here on how you want to basically optimize your Google Search Console so you are targeting more demographics, for example. Okay, so in this case, I'm gonna select. So in this, so you can see is international target set up to target one country. Mine is yes. Okay, a lot of times what you're gonna find is if you go into here, you're gonna find that it's unlisted. Okay, which you can then change it to the target users you want for a specific country, just to give Google another hint to let Google know that this is a specific country that you're trying to target. So yeah, and that is for the international targeting. So with Google Search Console, this is pretty much how you make sure that your Google Search Console is set up properly. You want to identify all these main issues first, because like I mentioned, if you go in and start your optimization without looking at what's going on with your Google Search Console, you're going to have a lot of issues with your campaigns, like implementing stuff. And the worst thing is if you implement it for 3 months and nothing happened, and then you find out that your website is actually either tracking the wrong version or not tracking the correct demographics, or there's some coverage issues and things like that, then that would have been 3 months worth of work that is wasted in a sense. So you want to be productive and you want to make sure that you get the fundamentals set up first. So that's why this is very important. The foundations of these are very important. Okay, so with that being said, that's all for this video. So in the next video, what I'll be touching on will be on the Google Business Profile. This is specifically for if you have a local business, but even if you don't have a local business, it will be good for you to set up your Google Business Profile, because that gives you a lot more credibility in Google's in Google's world, because you have got your because you have a Google Business Profile to show that you are a legit business. Okay, so with that being said, that's all for the video. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.